I need to change the auxiliary belt on my Renault Clio. It's a Clio II 2003 1.5 DCI. Now, my car is a poverty spec. It doesn't have air conditioning. What this means for me is that I don't have an automatic tensioner, spring tensioner. I've got a manual one. Now, I'm trying to delicately balance my camera now to show you the two bolts that you need to unfasten. They're two 10mm bolts. It's the two that you can see in the centre of the screen. I might try to add arrows to this if I need to later. So the one on the left hand side that you can see at the moment, left hand centre, that one allows the entire tensioner mechanism to pivot around the right hand one. So the left hand one does all the clamping along the sort of slit that it's going through, and that's based on how far you tension it. That's why the slit is there, to allow different sort of movement. And the one on the right is the one at which it pivots around, and they both need tightening of course, but the one on the left does far more clamping. Now access is a little poor down here, which is why I'm trying to balance the camera slightly. I found, I'll show you the sort of spanner that you will need. Yeah. So this is the kind of spanner that I use for this trick. It's a very sort of deep spanner. I'll take off my headlight. It's a deep sort of section spanner like this. You need this because of the access. It needs to be relatively long as well. If you have a standard ring spanner without this kind of deep section, you're not going to be able to get on it very well. You can't get a socket on it. It's a bit of a pig to get to. So something like this is worth getting. You can get these very easily, this spanners like this, if you don't currently have them. And the way in which you want to put it down is like this, and of course you're probably not going to see now because I haven't got my head torch on. Let's see if I can get some light assistance in here. Yeah, there you go. So again, it's those two bolts that you can just see there. There's one there, that's the pivotal bolt, and then that one just there, I'm kind of pushing towards, that is the bolt on the slit which allows it to pivot around that other bolt. Normally this is the process of using one flat per side of a 12-sided spanner, so it's very slow. But all you need to do is release enough tension just to get it to move. Now the worst problem with this tensioner you might find is getting enough tension on the belt. There's no proper way of doing it. There is a proper Renault tool, I believe. I don't have it. But the only real way I found is to use a big pry bar down in there and pry the top of the tensioner on that face there, that surface that I'm tapping. You need to pry onto that surface under that gap inside there with a big pry bar to get enough tension, otherwise it's very difficult. I'm under the car now, of course, just removing the belt. This particular car, as I said, is poverty spec, so it's got a total of 3 pulleys. There's the crankshaft, there is the tensioner that I've just showed you, and then there is the alternator. There is no power steering because it's electric, and there is no air conditioning because it's poverty spec, which makes it a little bit easier to do this on, although access is still poor, as it often is. I was just remembering as I was halfway through removing this belt, there is actually a 4th pulley on this car. It's simply an idler pulley. It's the one that's furthest most here. It does nothing at all. It's quite a large pulley. It's not connected to anything. It's just a large idler. I completely forgot about that one. Apologies. You get one free kick to my shins for that. And we have the belt. Now this belt I think is very worn. Yeah, I'll show you this belt on the bench. Let's go to the bench. So over on the bench, and now that I've got the old belt off, I just wanted to quickly show you the difference between the old one and the new one. This is the new belt, that there is the old belt, and really it comes down to how sort of sharp the grooves and the V section is of this belt here. What's happened is, as it's worn, is it digs much deeper into the belt, wears away the rubber, so you get a much more profiled sort of V shape on this one. It's much more spiky to touch. You don't get that anywhere near so much on the new belt. As you can see, it's much more flat, the profile across it there. That means that it's essentially got a lot less grip on all the components it's turning. It's only turning the alternator on my car as a loaded component. So it's not too bad, but if you had more of that, it's likely to slip. More loaded components is likely to slip even more. But the V shape as well on the new one is much more shallow, just providing more grip. So just to quickly show you what it is, it's not just a case normally when belts wear out of either snapping, of course, or just losing these grooves, which it sometimes can do, but also just look at the depth of the grooves and the sharpness of the V. That also indicates wear. I've just put the new belt back on the car. That's not something I can easily show you with one hand holding a camera. It's tight for space in there, but you'll figure it out and get it back on. Now really I just wanted to show you the next step, which is applying tension to this manual tensioner that I've got. I do that with a large pry bar like this, and where I go, it's going to be difficult to show you, but you need to pry onto the part of the tensioner that I'm pointing at just there. I might add an arrow in later, and then go under the alternator, something like this. Right, there's the top of the tensioner, and there's a gap that I'll be putting the pry bar in there to lever on it. Try and show you what I'm doing. That gap in there. And then levering like that, there. Now that is the only way that I've found, levering in that position. It's not great, it's still fiddly. That's the only way that I've found to supply sufficient tension to this in order to stop the belt from slipping in future. Now, in a moment, I'm definitely have to go back to one-handed because I need to now tighten up the two bolts, and I have to do that whilst holding this pry bar with enough force on it. So it's very fiddly to do. So I've just finished tightening that up, and I wanted really to show you the belt tension. So I'm pushing that really quite firmly now. It's not twisting very much at all. I'll try and get you a view down here if I can. There. So that's under firm twisting pressure, and it can go about 45 degrees. Sorry about my head torch, it's the only way of getting light down here. And the deflection along this longest run here is only a few mil, maybe 5 mil at most, under reasonably firm pressure doing that. And that's what I can get out of it. So that's now the aux belt fitted with these manual tensioner cars. Of course, if you've got an automatic tensioner, your life is a lot more easy. You just release the tensioner and it's already done. But with these manual tensioners, it's a real fiddle due to their design. There's no accurate way of applying good tension. You have to sit with a bloody crowbar, pry bar, and tighten those up, those two small nuts. But at least if I showed you this method now, firstly where the two nuts are that you need to loosen and tighten, and also there which surfaces to pry on and where to go with the pry bar, that certainly helps. And it can be done one-handed, one on the pry bar and one on the spanner, tightening up both of those nuts. It's not too bad once you've done it a few times. So thanks very much for watching.